last year. He's going to atone. But more importantly, the big fellas up front with Zeke is the tandem that we'll be looking forward to. Remember red zone. Remember Zeke busting big runs like he didn't do last year. It'll be more than 9.5.
Fair enough. Remember, 17 games, too, an extra game to do it. Mike T, more or less 29.5 touchdown passes for Big Ben.
Way less greedy. Way less. 3 new offensive linemen, and you were just educating me that apparently Najee Harris is Gale Sayers, so they have a much better run game. And I think as they get closer to the red zone, they're going to be looking to run the ball apparently because this guy's going to be so dynamic. So we're going to go less.
Whose idea was it to give Tannenbaum the Roethlisberger question? We need to have a meeting. Next, Kimberly, more or less 5.5 touchdown grabs for OBJ.
Oh, I'm going to say more. Here's why. He had 4 in 2019. I think this year, Baker, the offense is going to be more balanced. Baker's going to be asked to throw more, so I think more targets are going to get more opportunities. Plus, extra game this season, so more than 5.5.
That always factors in here. I feel a need to continue to remind everybody we're going to play 17 games this year because I think it's going to take a little while for that to sink in. Having said that, Marcus Spears, you obviously know OBJ, your LSU connection is one, so you've known him since he was very young. But I know there is another superstar that you know it equally well, that you would equate this situation to as people wonder, OBJ coming back, will this actually be a good thing or a bad thing for the Browns? What is your take?
Yeah. My take is to stop trying to create a narrative that doesn't exist. And the player you were talking about that I played with was Terrell Owens. And it was this, it always seemed to be this narrative that people were trying to create about what type of teammate he was and what the goals were and how did he focus on his job. Played with him, he was a team guy. And most of the guys that you talk to, and the only reason I say most of the guys, because the guys that you have access to that play with T.O. will tell you the same thing. And I feel like this has been something that's been tried and tried over and over again to attach to Odell Beckham Jr. We had a conversation about Baker not being good because he was on the field, and somehow that was turning into that being his fault. And we talked about how OBJ, the stuff that he did on the sideline, like players in the NFL ain't been doing that since the beginning of damn time. But the bottom line is this: OBJ is back, and the narrative cannot be created about a player, especially when we have so much access to him, that's not true. And I haven't heard players come out and say OBJ is a problem. I haven't heard anybody talk about how hard he worked, his work ethic, anything like that. So, look, and the only reason I'm saying this, G, is because last year when we were having this conversation, it somehow became that OBJ was a problem because Baker Mayfield wasn't playing well. It was because Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski was starting new, and it was figuring things out. I want OBJ on my team based on the things that I know about him, and guys that have played with him will tell you about him. So, I'm not going to say let us. I'm not standing for anybody creating a narrative because OBJ is coming back that it's going to become an issue because he's on offense and he's going to either be demanding the ball or Baker Mayfield going to take a step back. It's just not true and not the way that he operates or people around him operates. This will fit in well. It's a better understanding of Kevin Stefanski's offense. OBJ understands his role in this offense, and that's to be dynamic as he's been when he's been on the field. So I'm going to leave it at that. I ain't letting this narrative get created that it's going to be an issue when OBJ comes back to play wide receiver for the Browns. It's going to be a plus and an add.
All right. Everything you say is fair. Kmart, you were around that team at the end of last season. What is your sense of the impact OBJ's return will have on the quarterback and on the team?
I think it's got to be huge, and I don't mean statistically. I just think they've got to figure out how to get Baker and him on the same page. Baker had more interceptions than touchdowns when targeting Odell last year in his career. So I think, but again, I'm actually all in on Baker and Odell. Maybe because the flip side is this doesn't work, and that to me is catastrophic. If these two can't figure it out, then that's a problem.
Here's the question I would ask, because the comparison to Terrell Owens is a good one, and I know T.O. a little, not well. And I've heard many people say the same things Marcus just said. But is there something to the larger-than-life personality wide receiver, whether they're good guys, bad guys, team guys, not team guys, that creates a dynamic where there is a pressure to get that guy the ball sometimes that does impact the offense at times in a way that is not advantageous.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but Dan Orlovsky made this point, a couple of days ago, which is if Baker Mayfield just plays quarterback, Odell Beckham, and you just made this point about Devin Bush going back to Pittsburgh, which is Odell Beckham may impact the AFC more than anybody else because he can make the one or two plays in the game that changes the whole narrative of the game because he can score touchdowns. So yeah, there's an aspect of flamboyant screening, but he can change a game all by himself because of his explosiveness.
Well, that's the point, is that the way that offense is structured, it's not going to be 9 catches for 116 yards and all that kind of stuff most of the time. It's 2 or 3 plays that change the game. Is that going to work? If it does, then that chemistry works, then I agree, it can only be additive.
Really, it's like Tyreek Hill in Kansas City, the 1 or 2 plays game that he could flip the whole game himself.
Open.
The difference is they throw the ball on every down, and the Cleveland Browns want to give it to their 2 outstanding running backs. We'll see. In the meantime, as we have much more football to go, yesterday another very busy day in NBA free agency. Let's go through some of the notable deals. Steph Curry has agreed to a 4-year, $215 million extension with the Warriors, making him the first player ever to sign 2 $200 million contracts in his career. Elsewhere, the Bulls, they've been busy finalizing a sign and trade to bring Spurs forward DeMar DeRozan to Chicago. DeRozan will sign a 3-year, $85 million deal with the Bulls. And look who's teaming up with LeBron. His longtime friend Carmelo Anthony, a 1-year deal with the Lakers. The 18-year vet averaged 13 a game off the bench for Portland last year. He can still fill it up. So with Melo, the Lakers now have 6 players on the roster who are over the age of 35. And the projected starting 5, only AD will be under the age of 32. As currently constructed, this would make them the oldest team in NBA history, according to Elias. And so we have kept our buddy Windy up way past his bedtime in Tokyo as he is covering the Olympics for us because we needed to ask you just one very simple question, Windy. They've got a lot of names that we know. That is an old team. I just pointed out the oldest team ever. Is that a championship team in Los Angeles right now?
Well, it's old man summer in the NBA. Look at all these guys like Kyle Lowry and Chris Paul getting paid. This is just falling in line with the trend. Also, I'd like to point out the Lakers signed 3 guys in their 20s yesterday. Taylor Horton-Tucker, Malik Monk, 2 of those guys they signed. So Kendrick Nunn. So I want to point out that they do have a variety on their roster. They can go different ways. But the big concern is how are they going to defend? They were a top 5 defense each of the last 2 years, and they've flushed that entire roster. They have to start from scratch. So I actually think Carmelo Anthony fits pretty well with what they need, which is spot-up shooting and a guy who will spread the floor for Westbrook and LeBron. But I don't know how they're going to reassemble that defensive-minded team that won the championship, and I'm kind of surprised. That's the issue more than the age for me.
So I think a lot of people will look at this move of bringing in Carmelo Anthony and say, that's LeBron bringing in his guy. Does it make